everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel. And today I have another video for you all. Today, I want to talk about kink in the workplace. And no, sadly, I am not referencing the movie Secretary. Although, I do have a review of that movie up on my Patreon if you want to see my thoughts about it. No, instead, we need to discuss an article for The Cut, which had a little bit of a viral moment. And this is a real title. It was called, Help, Our DEI Trainer Won't Stop Talking About Kink. Yeah, that's not great. And I swear I am not trying to only talk about news headlines these days, but they have made it really hard for me because for some reason, polyamory and BDSM are hot topics in just about every major newsroom in America, from the New York Times to the Atlantic. And since I am one of the few people on YouTube qualified to speak about this stuff, I feel like it is important to lend my perspective when I can. As from what I can tell, for example here, author Emily Gould does not have a personal interest in kink herself. Very few of the authors covering these stories seem to. And actually, if you have been on the internet for a long time, you might recognize that name. She was a writer for the now-defunct gossip blog Gawker, which she infamously defended during a Larry King live appearance in 2007. A re-uploaded copy of the interview has over 3 million views on YouTube today, which might not seem like much, but it's quite an accomplishment for a moment that happened before Facebook had grown much outside of college campuses. And a year later, in 2008, she espoused the virtues of blogging in an article for the New York Times. Many actually credit this article for the popularization of the term oversharing, which is used ubiquitously on social media today. And despite her personal passion for disclosure, though, Emily doesn't seem to write about sex very often, let alone kink specifically. I did some research into her catalog of work, and the closest thing I could find was a 2023 interview with Rachel Lotus for a piece about sex education. And actually, she asked explicitly about educating kids on asexuality in a positive way as part of the spectrum of human experience, which, if you're gonna do that, you're always gonna get some good points in my book, but that's about all I could find that seemed to get close to the subject we're going to be talking about today. Her beat these days appears to be an advice column, alongside more typical features writer fare, and naturally, an advice column in today's age will talk about sex sometimes, even if the Dear Abby on the other end isn't exactly an expert. But at the very least, it doesn't seem like we're dealing with somebody who's like a rabidly anti-sex, anti-DEI journalist with a bone to pick who picked this question specifically to tear down the whole idea of kink and DEI. I mean, thank goodness we're not dealing with that, and these days it really never hurts to check. So, with that initial background out of the way, let's get to the article. And I recommend we all take a deep breath first, because I think we're going to need it. All right. Diving in here, the query begins, quote, Dear Emily, the individual straight cises whom I work with are pretty nice for the most part. Still, people, mostly my boomer coworkers, often misgender other people, mostly the younger they-thems, at my office and bristle when corrected. This has led to hurt feelings all around and some trans workers leaving the organization. Clearly, trans staffers, including me, thought, we need some outside help. So we requested that a trainer outside our org be hired to do a cultural competency training that would cover pronoun use. And though it took years of private cajoling and public shaming, we finally got what we wanted. Well, we kind of got it. As part of the approval process, the DEI consultants we work with had to pick the trainer. And Wow, what a pick they made. The trainer is an interesting person who belongs to many identity groups, including being trans, but more significantly, identifies as being kinky. Of course, I celebrate every time anyone, but especially a trans person, finds sexual gratification in this world. But their own kinkiness has come up a lot in this 101 level training on gender identity. We asked for an intersectional perspective, but perhaps we should have specified the intersection. And already I am finding that I have the urge to hang my head in shame over this. I'll give Mixed Vanilla here a pass for seeing kink purely as a form of sexual gratification because I have a feeling this trainer didn't do much to alleviate that association. The kink/polyamory is just a sex thing problem continues, but to make sure I'm understanding this situation correctly, this person's office had a problem with pronouns being respected that was so bad it went on for years being unaddressed to the point people quit over it. And when they finally did get the DEI training they had asked for, they had no say in who the trainer would be, and it was all up to other consultants and I assume the higher-ups who was going to be picked for that. And then they happened, just coincidentally, to pick a trainer who seems to be tailor-made to make already reluctant boomers think trans identity is a freaky bedroom thing. Fantastic. For the record, I do think boomers are capable of understanding this, and I'm not trying to put down boomers, but I'm using the phrasing from the question. Now, I had already left the corporate world by the time diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is what DEI is, became a widespread buzzword, so I don't really have experience with it in that kind of context, but I have taken DEI training before, and let me tell you, I have some opinions about it, and we'll get to that later probably, but is this kind of thing typical in a corporate setting? I am personally getting major malicious compliance middle manager style vibes already, but let's continue with the article before we make any calls about that. So, the article goes on, quote, for example, when addressing questions like, what should I say if someone misgenders my coworker? This person's answers include that misgendering may be all right if it is part of sexual play. But why would any of us be doing sexual play with our coworkers in the workplace? This wasn't the guidance I was hoping for. Colleagues who knew I agitated for the training are texting me on the side like, can we talk about the kinky thing? Or, I am really confused how kinky is an identity like trans, or they lost me with the kinky stuff, or LGBTQ. Sadly, I more or less agreed and have begun spite counting the hours I spent thinking about this issue and talking to people about it, which has grown to more than 10 for a thing that was supposed to be simple and actually make my work life easier. Like many people, being trans has made me believe in conspiracies, which raises the question, did management intentionally pick this trainer in the hopes that this effort will fail or create confusion that will then allow people to continue to use the wrong pronouns for the they-thems? Because when they do, they will be like, I thought you were into misgendering, kinky style, as implied by the mandatory HR training. And as much as I hate to leap to conspiracy theories, I have to say, Mixed Vanilla and I are of the same mind on this one. This whole situation screams feet-dragging, purposeful incompetency. The boardroom equivalent of a partner who refuses to load the dishwasher for months because you're just so much better at it than me, honey. Then when you finally put your foot down and insist they do it at least once because you are sick and cannot handle it, they melt all of your favorite Tupperware. But backing up for a second, let's talk about the whole LGBTQ thing. Chances are, by the time I am editing this, it'll be pretty close to, if not the first week of June, and that means Pride Month discourse. Yay! No. On and off for the last several years, people have been having a faux argument about whether or not kink is a sexual identity like gay or bisexual is. And this year, I predict we will be seeing even more of that, especially if Libs of TikTok gets hold of any fulsome street fair footage, which is not even in June, but I'm sure that will not stop her. Frankly, I am surprised it hasn't happened yet. Is there room in the queer community discourse on whether or not kink is a sexual identity? Sure, but it probably shouldn't be happening at a mandatory HR work training. I almost wonder if they accidentally found a trainer who specializes in DEI consulting for sex-positive and queer spaces, not the workplace, and just didn't bother to check further than that. I've actually had the opposite problem where someone tried to essentially control H all of the corporate stuff into kink community stuff in their presentation, and the end result was less than satisfactory. But it wasn't as mortifyingly embarrassing as the reverse appears to be. Maybe the trainer doesn't understand how work relationships are not the same as personal ones. Like maybe they don't really have any experience in a normal, typical 9-to-5 in-person workplace. Were they suggesting that a coworker who misgenders another might be doing some sneaky roleplay and so it should therefore be ignored? I mean, the mind really boggles at the possibility. Like, sure, I guess it could be kinky play, but you probably shouldn't be doing it that openly in the workplace, and that is not the focus we should be having in this conversation about gender identity, in my humble cis opinion. Take that for what it's worth. And I have heard stories of power exchange relationships that happen at the office. Often it's the dominant and they're a business owner and they have their submissive come work for them, or they own a family business together. So it's not entirely out of the question that someone might have a relationship in the office that involves kink. The difference is that it's either a really small company, like a company of 2 people, or they keep that stuff under wraps. I mean, sorry to once again ruin your secretary fantasies, I know, but can't just engage in dirty talk around the water cooler on your break, or use your corner office for a flogging session at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. If you're going to do it, I recommend taking a few pages from Love and Leashes, actually, though make sure you watch the full movie first because they definitely push it too far in some areas, and it does have consequences. I am more referencing this for the sake of the text your dom pictures of your lunch from the company cafeteria level stuff. I think that's fine. Not the playing with whips in the break room stuff, alright? There's a difference between those two. And I don't want to be the fun police here, but is it really worth it to be blackballed from your job and possibly your entire career field because you couldn't wait until after 5 p.m. to do that spanking somewhere else? In my opinion, I don't think it is. And at the very least, you would be making your coworkers uncomfortable, and that can quickly lead to HR trouble, if not outright firing. But getting a little bit away from the topic at hand. So let's finish up Mixed Vanilla's question here. Maybe I should leave it alone. Am I just being prudish? Shouldn't I let this trainer bring their whole self to work? Still, trans people are often perceived as hypersexualized, so I think it matters what associations are made in our workplace. And on a more personal level, I don't want Sharon from accounting picturing me with whipped cream and a cat o' nine tails because I include my pronouns in my email signature. It's opening a weird door at work that I would like to remain shut. Plus, if I were the trainer and people were confused by or mocking my lessons, I'd want to know for my own reputation and professional development. Is there a way to offer constructive, respectful feedback that would not be perceived as sex shaming? Should I drop it in the chat during the next training that we don't need to hear about their field profile? Should I complain to the same boss who I begged to set up the training in the first place? Is the lesson here never to ask for anything at work, to quietly stew in my own simmering resentment rather than take action? How very kinky. Yours, mixed vanilla. No, in my humble opinion, I don't think that mixed vanilla is being prudish here. It's one thing to be uncomfortable around kink at, say, a gay bar, or to not even be able to talk about it in a passing way with a potential hookup when you're trying to set boundaries. Like, if you can't get the words out, I don't like spanking. If you have a meltdown because the person you want to take home asked you, hey, how do you feel about biting? That would probably warrant some self-reflection, but the workplace is one of the spaces where I really do feel like it's fine to have firm boundaries here. Most people are not going to be comfortable with their coworkers knowing what their intimate lives are like the same way they probably don't talk to their parents about what they do in the bedroom either. And maybe you all listening, you had a really bohemian upbringing, and that's a conversation you have around the dinner table every Sunday. I don't know. But for most people, that's probably not standard. Private life is private life. And even if you worked for a company developing the next big FetLife competitor, there's a world of difference between what kinks should we allow people to discuss on our new app? What might we run into issues with the App Store? Versus pulling down your pants without prompting so you can show off your latest bruise on your lunch break. The only conclusion I can draw is that the trainer didn't really know what they were doing and did not have a clear sense of boundaries or decorum themselves. And neither did the company who hired that trainer. And I am still highly suspicious they did it on purpose. If the company bigwigs don't give a crap about their trans employees, which multiple years of unaddressed discrimination issues would probably suggest, why wouldn't they find the cheapest trainer possible? Maybe even a trainer that, based on their description and maybe samples of their work, confirms their bias that trans folk are all kinky weirdos who might like to be misgendered as part of a power play thing in public. Do we know who hired this person? Can we check who they follow on social media? Because that might be really telling, depending on what you can see and tell their bias might be. I guess it could just be regular old innocent incompetence. Maybe they don't get how misgendering is not the same as talking to your coworkers about your kinks, but I have a really hard time believing that. That seems, I don't know. I've seen too much. I can't believe it just stops there, you know? And personally, to get to the other question of like contacting this person for feedback, if there was a way to contact the trainer privately, I would certainly do that. Maybe they left a business card or a number or an online feedback form or something. I have used those before myself, though I've yet to get a reply to any of them, so who knows how useful they are, but I would at least check and be like, hey, just so you know, we requested this training to help people understand pronouns better. What did they tell you when they hired you that this was supposed to be about and for? But if you're gonna go in that direction, you have to be really careful about that not getting back to the bosses that you said that, and it would probably be risky. But Emily, when she answers this question, actually has a pretty good solution for this, which is to band together as coworkers and advocate for getting an in-house DEI consultant, someone who can be accountable and present at all times and vet trainers, and that way there's no more awkward mandatory meetings that go sideways. When you have bosses who don't take inclusion seriously, you get unserious solutions, like bringing in a random trainer after years of issues and calling the issue solved. Cross that one off the to-do list. And while there are many, many articles out there arguing about the virtues of DEI, I can say from my own experience, such one-off trainings are often, I'm sorry to say this, they are self-congratulatory wastes of time. They often don't know the issues within the organization that well enough to be able to address them specifically, and they mostly seem to make management feel better, like, yay, we did it, now we're an awesome inclusive company and no more issues, right guys? And it's like, no, this did not help at all. And I am someone who loves inclusion. I want people to feel comfortable and have their needs met, but some solutions are products. They're not really solutions. They are, as Emily puts it in the article, expensive band-aids. And this, to me, reeks of band-aids. If you want to read the rest of Emily's thoughts, you can find the rest of the article linked down below. She doesn't say anything super positive or negative about kink, so I just wanted to focus on lending my own perspective to this question that is more focused on that kink angle, because I feel like it was really just more focused on like workplace, DEI, working together as coworkers type stuff. So, in summary here, we are not yet ready as a society to talk about kink in the workplace. Engaging in kink at work is still a no-go, and it's probably bad form to assume a harassment issue like repeated misgendering or rude comments is just a kink thing. The wrong kind of training can lead people to form hard-to-root-out assumptions about communities they don't often interact with, and this is something that we do need to be cognizant of. While yes, there are people who have workplace relationships that are also kink relationships or power exchange relationships, I recommend keeping it out of the office as much as possible, and if it is going to be there, keep it out of sight, keep it discreet. And it is a real shame that we are once again seeing kink involvement used to put the trans community in a bad light and vice versa. This is one of the inherent dangers of linking kinkiness to queerness and transness. You will get bad actors who use kink to prove that queerness or transness is a bizarre sex thing and that queerness or transness is a deeply rooted perversion. Ignorant bosses are maybe not as bad as, say, libs of TikTok, but they can do some serious personal damage even without all the Twitter followers, because the office, for a lot of people, is much harder to escape from than social media. And I think many of us know what it's like to have bad interactions with a coworker that we can't really do much about. People that make us feel bad about who we are, our identities, or just don't seem to respect us or act in a creepy way. And I think trying to minimize that should be the goal of any manager. Like, honestly, if you're not doing that, if you're not trying to improve the workplace, what are you doing as a manager, honestly? I simply do not. I just simply cannot understand. But those are my thoughts about this article. I am certainly very curious to hear what other people have to say about this. I know DEI is a very contentious issue, and I didn't necessarily do a lot of research into it in general for this video, but I can recall from previous times I looked it up myself just out of personal curiosity that the benefits of it seem to be, we're still working on it. We're not quite sure if it's all it's cracked up to be. And as I was saying, in my opinion, I do think that most trainings, if it's coming from somebody that doesn't really care about the issues, not really doing the vetting they need to do, they're kind of just doing it to hand wave away the issue, you're not going to get beneficial outcomes. It's just going to be a waste of everyone's time. And then we're all going to go, yay, we did the training. We're all better now. Racism and transphobia is solved, right? No, if only it were that easy, truly. But anyways, I would love to hear your thoughts about this in a comment down below. If you have had a DEI training at work, has it ever talked about kink before? How common is this? Again, my suspicion is they found a DEI trainer who specializes in talking about kink and sexuality, maybe for people that work in like mental health or coaching or something, where getting into people's personal lives is something you have to navigate a little bit more, but honestly, I don't know. I mean, also, it could be fake. This could also be a fake question from a robot used to stir up controversy about DEI because that's a hot thing that we're doing now, I guess. So, not necessarily always true, but if it is true, let me know your thoughts about this, your experience, anything else you want to share in a comment down below. You can go over to my Patreon. Thank you so much if you do already support me there. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.